Hi, thanks so much for joining us this week. It's going to be an awesome episode today.
Oh yeah, we're going to see a great interview with Bob Wolfgram, whose music really pushed the boundaries for Christians, you know, back in the 60s and 70s.
Wow.
And Trafford Fisher has some tips on what to do if you decide you need to share a house with the in-laws.
Oh, tough one.
Yeah.
But first up, churches spend thousands of dollars on marketing, trying to get the community to notice them. But this Christian couple scored the front page of one of Australia's major weekend magazines for free. How did they do it? Let's take a look.
It's a pleasure to welcome Lisa and John Owen to the set. Recently, the Sydney Morning Herald had this to say about their ministry. Quote, "It's a fair bet that if Jesus Christ were around today, he'd be doing what the Owens are doing in Mount Druitt. They feed the poor and house the homeless, and they lead the lost, and they counsel the conflicted." That's a pretty high recommendation, particularly coming from a newspaper not particularly well known for endorsing or recommending the Christian faith. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, this is exciting to read. My mother actually showed the article to me. I read it and I thought, my, oh my, I've got to meet these guys, and here you are. And so thanks so much for making time to be with us. Now, you're living in Mount Druitt, and you've opened your home to people who are looking for friendship and also for assistance. Lisa, tell me about that.
Okay, well, we moved into Bidwell 5 years ago, and we were quite intentional about the neighbourhood that we chose. And I guess what we aim to do is just to be good neighbours.
Great.
So,
what's Bidwell like? Because many of our viewers, of course this is shown around the world, but also many of our viewers in Australia or even in Sydney. I've never been to Bidwell, so tell me about it.
okay, well, it's not really like they make it out to be on the news. So Bidwell it's 90% public housing, predominantly Caucasian people, but with a higher than national average percentage of Pacific Islanders and Indigenous Australians.
Okay.
So, and probably it's fair to say that in Bidwell people do see more of their neighbours than what they do in some other neighbourhoods.
Right.
So, which is fantastic for us because we want to get to know people, that's why we're there.
That's right. So the ministry that you're working with is called Urban Neighbours of Hope.
That's right.
John, what does that mean? You've moved into a neighbourhood, you've moved into the area of Sydney with the highest density of public housing. Why that area, and how do you share hope?
Well, we won't make poverty history until we make poverty personal. You know, we see the Spirit is moving within the church, and there are a lot of great programs and a lot of great things going on where we are really making some big inroads in improving not only people's lives in the poorest countries on this earth, but also in our nation's ghettos overseas and here as well. And I think it all begins from an expression of hospitality, from being at home, from a place of acceptance, because you can have all the great programs in the world, but if we are not building into people's hearts and souls and spirits, then it's really just going to be another program that they can just tick a box with. So I think when we have enough of us Christians move into an area, we can really begin to make hope real, make hope tangible, and help people find God, which helps birth hope and helps rebirth dreams that may have been forgotten or killed along the way.
Well, let me ask you what this means in practical day-to-day life. What do you mean by hospitality, Lisa? How are you opening your home?
Okay, well, we make people feel welcome. So when we moved into our new neighbourhood, we introduced ourselves to the neighbours, but also it's often through, you know, people know that everybody's welcome at our house, so they'll bring friends along, and particularly if people are struggling in some way, need an extra bit of support, they'll say, oh, come and talk to John and Lisa, they'll be able to help you out. So it's kind of word of mouth and grows over time. So we have a lot of kids play in our house. We have 2 children ourselves, so that sort of fits quite nicely, and I'd rather they played in my house than where I can't supervise them, so I'm happy for them to have friends around.
That's great. But when I read the Sydney Morning Herald article, we weren't talking about people coming to your home that have sort of superficial, I'm not feeling good today issues. There were talks about, the articles covered hard drug users, alcohol problems, people who are fleeing domestic abuse. opening your home to people who are in that big of deep trouble, how does that play for you, John? Are you worried? I mean, this sounds like a complicated process.
Yeah, well, naturally there are all the fears as a father of young children and a husband, having your wife in an area like that. But the thing that we always come back to is that there are families growing up in these areas. There are families growing up in the midst of so much pain and poverty and despair. And when they reach out in desperation and they ask the question, "Who is my neighbour?" The tragic answer, certainly in Australia, is that the answer is generally it's not a Christian. Someone who has a hope that is alive and real within their hearts that can be shared with them. And so the fears are real, but they are always in a secondary place to where would Jesus want us to be. And we feel very strongly called by God to be in that place, to be a loving, consistent, stable presence that helps people find some peace and safety, and we pray God.
I thought some of the testimonials from people who have been blessed by your ministry, once again, in the Sydney Morning Herald, this isn't sort of ministry propaganda, this is a pretty hardcore secular paper. We're just inspiring people who had come and had no friends to lean on. And you guys have just opened your house and your arms. Lisa, where do you find the strength to do that? From
God. It's the simple answer is, God sustains us. And I think the thing is where we believe He wants us to be. And as we are spending time with people, I really believe that we're meeting with Him. So that's what sustains us.
You know, one of the things that I find impressive about you as well is that it's not that you're two people without job opportunities. You've got an IT background, my understanding is, John, and you're a doctor of pharmacology. These are high-powered careers, and yet you've moved in where most middle-class Australians would never even think of living. I mean, we're all real estate mad. We're trying to get the best house in the best street in the best suburb. How did you make that decision to rush in where middle-class people or upper-middle-class people rush out?
Well, when you're choosing property, it's all about location, 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 isn't it? When we're looking for a place and we factor Jesus into that, we say, what location would Jesus move into? And when we read the Gospels, we see that He is in consistent contact with people on the margins. And then when we take a deep look at our society, because we're well educated, we grew up in nice, stable neighbourhoods. We're actually raised to not see public housing estates. We're actually raised to not necessarily associate with anyone who is of what we perceive to be a lower standing than ourselves. Even me as a migrant, I would say we don't hang out with those kind of people. And it's a kind of arrogance that I guess is one of the sins of our culture. But then when we really do time with Jesus and we see the places He goes and the places He moves into, and we seek out His leading in our lives and His lordship, we see that there are these places and there are needs, and Jesus is saying, I want us, more and more of my followers, to be there and not in the places of safety and comfort.
Well, thanks so much for being with us. Before you go, I just want to note that John has written a book, Muddy Spirituality. It's available at Coorong. It's available online. If you go to Urban Neighbours of Hope and you Google it, you'll be able to find it. If you want to find out the kind of spiritual commitment that drives people to give up all the trappings of a successful middle-class life and dedicate their lives and their talents to the marginalized in our society, you want to get this book and really think through. I think it challenges my Christianity, frankly, John and Lisa, and I think it'll challenge a lot of our viewers too. Thanks again for being with us.
Man, I just love those guys.
Yeah.
I really wanted to get them back in the studio. I made a few phone calls and emails and that sort of thing. But they're just so humble. They really don't want to be celebrities. They just want to get out there and help their neighbours.
Yeah.
Simple as that, really.
It's so awesome what they're doing. Hey, we'll take a quick break now, but we'll be back in just a second. Stay with us.
We live our lives running around, rarely stopping to ask ourselves where we're going and what our final destination is. In the end, our lives become little more than routine. Step beyond and discover a path that offers comfort, love and hope. Visit hopeoffer.com/step beyond or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, we have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Hi, welcome back. Now, this next segment's going to be a bit interesting, I think, Dora. Advice about living with your in-laws.
Oh, I've got some advice for that. Don't.
You could have a point there. Let's check it out.
Well, I don't know about you. Do you have in-laws or outlaws? Here to speak with us today about living with in-laws is Trafford Fisher.
Thank you, Danielle.
Great to have you with us, Traff.
Yeah.
All right, spill the beans.
Look, every now and then we move in with the in-laws. And it's often negative, right? We talk about the outlaws, the mother-in-law. You know? We never hear about father-in-law jokes. I've got to dream some up. It's always mumsy-in-law, isn't it? It's kind of interesting. Look, there are times if we lose our job, if we hit financial hard times, or we may be doing a home renovation, or we want some cheap childcare. That's all cool.
Move back in.
Yeah. Medical reasons. There are times when sometimes we do have to shift in. So I think there's some things we've got to do because it can be fraught with a lot of tension and it can be tough. So we need to know our place. We are now in with the in-laws. Let's accept it. If we're going to do that, I think realistic, we have to say, okay, I'm in their space.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can fight that, but it's going to work against us. So know our place. I think know the rules. Because now it's their place, their rules. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily we have to do all of them every way exactly, but I do think we need to be sensitive. They have rules. This is when we do stuff, or this is how we've got to fit in with that. I really do. I think we can do it. We can know their place, know the rules. I think
know that they probably have home-cooked meals and cake.
Well, there's another
bonuses.
There's another bonus. Let's get some nice food. It's true. Mum and Dad, especially Grandma, often knows how to cook well. But look, I think it's worth also having an exit strategy.
Yeah.
In other words, if this doesn't work, let's say for some reason this doesn't work, what are we going to do? I think if we can actually have that somewhere in the back of our mind, this could work beautifully. It'd be wonderful. But if it doesn't, we're not caught surprised. So I think have an exit strategy. I think the other one is we've really got to preserve it. If we are married as a couple and move into the in-laws, we've got to preserve our own marriage and our own love life.
How would you suggest that people do that?
I think great. I think we need to say, hey, we're going to preserve our love life, and we might this is now in the house, or it's a little bit different.
Be a bit quiet.
We've got to find. We may have to go out to some restaurants and go to the pictures more often, go to the theatre, go to we do stuff together that makes sure we've got our time. I think it's really important, and we may not be quite as open and affectionate as we are in our own home, and that might be cool. They mightn't mind, but we've got to find those occasions to express our love and affection because they can get lost. I think too we need to protect the marriage itself. So if my mum and dad that I'm staying with might want to side with me at the expense or at the, not an attack necessarily, but they say something that infers my wife isn't quite doing it, I need to be right there for her. So I think that's really important. I've got to protect us and our marriage. So our marriage, our affection, have an exit strategy if it's necessary, remember the rules, remember the place, and I think we'll do it okay. I think we'll get there.
Great advice again, Traff.
Thank you.
Yeah, some great tips there, eh, Dora?
Yeah.
He really knows his stuff, doesn't he, Trafford Fisher?
And he likes to have a bit of fun, but always with respect. I like that.
Yeah, good call. Time for a break now. Don't go away. We'll be back in a minute.
Father, I can't connect the dots through the little that I understand. What words can I say to reach you? How can I know that you are there, listening, hearing, caring? My words are broken, weak, and powerless. But I know your power is limitless. What can I say?
Onions add great sweetness and flavour and a good base to any curry. Going to add some ginger, some garlic. Look at that, nice and chunky. So we've got our spices, gives it kind of a Sri Lankan feel. Add some tomatoes, tomato paste, some honey. Roasted vegetables in these kind of dishes are always great. But we add some creaminess to it. And that dish is now finished, ready to hit the table. I'd recommend you to give it a try, and it's so easy.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hey, welcome back. Now, our final interview for today is with a great guy with a lot of passion in his heart for God and music. He's had a fascinating journey with lots of ups and downs. It's a great story.
Yeah, it is. Let's take a look. Now, when I was growing up, this was one of the coolest records in my house. It probably shows, Bob, that maybe I didn't have really cool parents if Christian folk was the coolest we could get, but I still love this album. All My Friends Are Sinners. And on the back, there's you.
Wonderful.
The bro with the fro.
Yes.
Bob Wolfgram. What year was this?
1977 we recorded that and released it in early 78.
Wow, okay. It's it's interesting listening back to the music now, and it has just been digitally remastered.
It's wonderful to see.
It sounds like the 70s, just for our audience's benefit, because sadly some people have missed out on hearing your music. Let's just hear just a little grab from that record.
Have you heard the news? You have been set free. There was the Son of God dying. That I might go free. I am a refugee. I've reached the shores down in my years.
Now, Bob, this was sort of folk,
pop.
Yeah, folk pop.
Yep.
But then, what year was this?
The following year, 78.
Bob, the following year.
Yep.
But this sort of went more pop and less folk.
Yes.
Didn't it?
Yes.
But again, I got to say, like listening to those first, two tracks in particular, the opening tracks, Refugee being the theme of the album.
Yes.
I think, boy, with the current asylum seeker debacle we're having in Australia, it's as fresh as it ever was.
Thank you. Yes, I didn't set out to write something or any of my music. I didn't think it would last, because it was music written for a purpose. I was a street preacher for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And that's what guided my thinking about, okay, next Sunday night, Burke Street in Melbourne, it'd be good to have a good song, a new song, and so that's what I wrote for.
So there was something driving you there.
Yeah. And that album had a more political orientation, because I was studying politics at that time, just started. And of course, the first so-called boat people had become an issue under
from Vietnam.
Yes, under the Fraser years, and so I wanted to say something as a Christian citizen. What should my response be to these people?
Wow. What I find interesting, listening to these albums is how many of the songs actually reference the Gospels. The four Gospels of the New Testament. How many songs are from the point of view of a particular disciple, and even the label that you introduced, Galilee, is very focused on that particular area of the Bible. Why did you do that?
My imagination was captured by the gospel story, and it still is. So as I read the stories for my song Inspiration, I tried to put myself in one of the characters' places, imagine what it'd like to be Peter or James or John, and out of that construct a song.
One thing I find interesting, and just reflecting on the bro with the fro there on the back of that album cover, you're there with two white guys, and I know from the very unauthorised and novelised biography, well, it's not really your biography, but Lowell Tarling's 1967. This is it.
Yes.
Sort of really gives me the impression that it wasn't that easy necessarily growing up a black kid in Sydney at that time in the 60s.
No, this is all pre-multiculturalism, which became the political novelty of the 70s and now firmly entrenched. Wonderful thing as government policy in Australia. But in those 60s, it was pretty tough. There was the White Australia policy was sort of this ghost in the background of Australia's foreign policy, and it wasn't until that was dealt with by politics that Australia really took a good turn and things opened up for. But yes, my first school in Australia, I was the 700 kids, and I think there were two black stroke brown skinned kids. One was a Mexican and I was the other one.
And that was you.
Couldn't get in a soccer game at school in the playground, and it was very hard. But those things become the fodder that you use in your art to say something later in life, to be, as with the refugee theme, to be more welcoming to strangers and people who are foreigners.
Do you think did it feed into sort of an angry revolutionary young man thing? Or?
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it did. But I was reading a lot of good Christian literature. So for a while there, I became. I went in from my Christian high school, and participated in the moratorium against the Vietnam War. So I took a stand against violence and warfare, and so I found ways to deal with my anger and into social political movements that said something good about the message of the gospel and how to apply it in public life.
And your music was, quite contemporary for the time. How did that work?
It was hard. It was difficult to persuade conservative Christian people generally. It wasn't just Adventism. Conservatism was right through evangelical Christianity at the time. So, yes, I can't remember whether anyone at my Melbourne Adventist boarding school had a guitar. I think it was a day student.
It was all piano and organs.
Piano and organs, and in my second year there, or third year at the boarding school, I started a guitar club. So encouraged students, rightly or wrongly, to buy guitars and bring them. And at lunchtimes during the school week, I held guitar classes.
How are you feeling that these albums worked out with the sound quality?
Tremendous.
Are you happy with them?
Just amazed. The work that Dale Willis has done on remastering them, and in the third album that we have coming, remixing the album.
Have I wasted all my life with these events? Don't reach you.
I mean, it's all there. I couldn't be happier, Kent.
Well, that's great. And look, if you want to get hold of that, it's through Salty Music, and address is right there on your screen. So, wow, that's awesome. What I'm really excited about is that you and Sally Hilda, who was the singer for this, you're actually doing a concert together this very weekend. So some of you will be seeing this broadcast before this happens. So. Wow.
Our first concert ever together, because she was the obvious choice for someone to sing my songs for the first Galilee album. And then we just never had a chance to get together. When that came out, I'd begun my university course in sociology and politics. And so how long's that ago? About 35 years ago, finally, we get a chance to promote the albums and the music, courtesy of Adventist Media and Salter Music, and Galilee's been reconstituted for the job, and
awesome stuff.
Avondale College, of course, so very grateful,
Well, look, I'm really looking forward to that, you know, to see the great reunion.
Great.
It's going to be awesome. Hey, and thanks so much for your time today, Bob. Really appreciate it. God bless you and your music.
Thank you.
Oh, it was such a privilege to meet Bob Doro. I've got to tell you, I actually heard his name quite a lot when I was growing up, because my parents sort of moved in some of the same circles. They were involved in music too. So for me, it was just great to meet him for myself and put some of those pieces together.
Oh, cool. He seemed like a really lovely guy, and it's a great way to finish our program today.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, that is it for InFocus Recouched this week. All the best from us here in the studio.
We'll see you next time. God bless.
That's great. I don't know how they do that. Hi, how you doing? Hey, Jack, good stuff. Hey. Hey. Hi. Hey, it's Vegas. Hey, looking good, looking good. Hi. Hi. This is amazing. This is just amazing. It's a typical Vegas night. The city's alive. This is a city that never sleeps. You know, they've got the pyramids over here. You've got the Eiffel Tower over there. And right around the corner, you're in Venice. They're all fakes, of course. Genuinely fake. In fact, they say that most people prefer this over the original. Now, what are you guys doing here? What does it look like we're doing here? Anyway. Why are you filming without me? Who are you? I'm the real you. No, you're not. I'm the real me. Now listen, you prove it. Well,
To receive a free DVD of the documentary Beyond Counterfeit, visit hopeoffer.com/counterfeit or call 1300 300 389.